to the Mahogany Bronze Hour, and I'm your host, Mahogany Bronze. Now, today on the broadcast, we're going to talk about something very interesting. Do you guys want to hear about the second Independence Day celebration in this country?
Yeah.
Did you know that we actually had one?
No.
Well, listen, we're going to talk about that today because everyone just celebrated the 4th of July. Remember, 4th of July, day off from work, barbecues, and having fun. But that's not the only Independence Day celebration that's recognized in this country, okay? Well, let me tell you where it comes from. Back in the 1800s, African Americans, people like me and you, we were actually slaves, okay? We were slaves, and when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, it was actually signed August 2nd, but it was actually approved July 4th. When it was signed, African Americans didn't feel like this was for us. That was the day that America recognizes that they gained their independence from Great Britain, but African Americans weren't free. You know how African Americans were looked at? They were looked upon as being property, not even human people. Can you imagine that? Not even human people. So for them, that wasn't their celebration, so they didn't recognize that as their celebration. But in 1863, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. You know what that was? That freed the slaves.
Yay!
Yes! Yes! They became free. Isn't that exciting? That was great news. Well, here's where it wasn't so great. It was signed 1863. That was great, right? January 1st, 1863 is when it was signed. But they didn't find out until 1865. That was like 2.5 years later. Why did it take so long for them to find out that they were free? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you had $1,000 in the bank and you were not told for 2 years? Imagine the suffering that you would not have had to do had you had $1,000, right? Well, that's exactly what happened with the slaves. They didn't realize that they were free. So there's a couple of reasons why people think the slaves didn't know. It was in 1865. Okay, June 19th, 1865 is when General Granger actually went to Galveston, Texas, and he let the slaves know that they were free. Do you know what they started doing when they found out they were free? Some of them were leaving like right away. They weren't waiting for even the announcement to finish. They were out of there. They were excited that they were free and that they were able to live a life free from slavery. But there's reasons that they say that they didn't find out. They said that there was a man on the way to tell the slaves they were free, but guess what? He got murdered. Another reason they said is because, well, we're going to let them work a little bit longer. They made them work a little bit longer and didn't tell them they were free, so the owners, the slave owners, could get more work out of them. And then another reason is because of the festival. There was a cotton festival that year, and they wanted the slave owners to benefit from it. So that was pretty sad, right? But listen, when the slaves found out, some of them left, but some of them stayed. Can you imagine being treated like a slave your whole life, and when you have an opportunity to be free, they didn't leave? Some of them just had gotten used to that lifestyle that they just didn't want to go. And some of them were out of there with a quickness. That would have been me, okay? They were out of there with a quickness. Now, how did the slave owners respond? The slave owners weren't so happy about this. When they found out that the slaves were free, they wanted some of them to stay. They said, listen, we'll pay you. And some of them didn't even want to stay even though they were getting paid. And some of them tried to get away. And as they were leaving, the slave owners were running them down and killing them. They were like, well, if you're not going to work for us, you're going to die today. So they were killing them. Isn't that sad? It's a sad story. Well, listen, let's talk about Juneteenth. Do you know, this is what's so exciting. Juneteenth today, just today, Pennsylvania named it as their state holiday. It's now recognized as a state holiday. It's actually recognized in like 39 states. So that means that not everyone recognizes Juneteenth. But Pennsylvania today was another one that jumped on board, and they're excited. The good news is that they have their holiday. The bad news is that the employers don't have to acknowledge it. They don't have to have you off like you are for 4th of July. But there's progress. President Obama actually tried to make this a national holiday, but it didn't go through. You know? But they're still trying. But isn't this exciting to know that there's 2 Independence Day celebrations?
Yay.
Yeah. Well, I am so glad that I was able to give you guys some information that you didn't know. And I hope that when June 19th comes, you will remember that was the day that your ancestors actually celebrate independence from this country. Because, like I said, they were not free until 1863. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to the broadcast, and we'll see you next time.